Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. Yes, there is yet more Naughty Dog stuff, and this time it's a little bit more dramatic as the fallout over who actually leaked this stuff is getting pretty serious, so there's a lot to talk about today. Also, of course, if you want more stuff like this, like our upcoming look at the Mick Gordon situation, the state of EA, and a bunch of other videos, then hit that sub button. We've got a lot going on, a lot in the way, and as always, your likes actually do help out a great deal with the algorithm, so that's all super helpful, but with that said, let's get stuck into the video. So first off, right, we had the story directly from Sony that they said they identified the source of The Last of Us 2 leak and that it was not somebody that was affiliated with themselves or Naughty Dog. Now, shortly after that, Jason Schreier said that according to two people that he spoke to with direct knowledge of how The Last of Us 2 was leaked, it was actually hackers who had found a vulnerability via a patch for an older Naughty Dog game. Now, this was reportedly then used to access Naughty Dog servers, get a build of the game, and actually, cause the leak. Now, at that time, Jason believed that the footage was devs playing an early build, and that rumors of it being a disgruntled contractor were not true, with him adding that Naughty Dog had also extended healthcare pay to their contractors during, the current situation. So, there was all of that. And at this stage, stuff was pretty messy. People didn't really know what to believe. And there was certainly a lot of strong feelings on either sides there. One side calling the other side shills or maybe conspiracy theorists, that kind of situation. Now, shortly after that initial sort of salvo went off, we got a little bit more information sort of reported on this hack. Basically, someone called PixelButts shared initial details on Twitter, and according to them, every Naughty Dog game has a final patch that includes an Amazon web server key that is paired with a secret bucket ID, and that will give you access to the contents of the server. Now, this stuff is different on a per-game basis, and this vulnerability is first worked out in January, according to them, of this year. So overall, it seems that via those older games and that vulnerability, the hacker was able to get access to Last of Us 2 materials. Indeed, the timestamps on some of the leaked material does actually line up with the timeline of events as laid out by PixelButts. Now, of course, that stuff all could be retroactively fabricated by PixelButts to make their stories seem more credible, but we should note that PixelButts noted that on the 30th of April, the AWS key was actually changed, right? And that patched up the vulnerability for now. So yes, that was done retroactively after the leaks, and that does suggest that Naughty Dog basically knew what happened to them and maybe got to it too late. Now, if that can be independently verified, then that lends a lot of credibility to the theory that yes, this actually was a hack. Now, one thing I've got to say though, how those AWS servers used for multiplayer had access to all of that unreleased content, I'm not sure. I mean, it seems like there's some sort of very bad security practice there. Seems like a bad way to structure things, but again, I'll leave that to the cybersecurity experts. But anyway, right, the story goes that The Last of Us 2 materials were obtained via that vulnerability and were not leaked by a member of staff. PixelButts seems to believe that someone associated with the original hacker is actually the person that leaked it, though, not the original hacker. And this is a very common thing, actually. So remember the recent Valve vulnerability? Well, that was because of a member of a sort of hacking group going rogue. And the original Half-Life 2 leak, that was because the hacker actually shared what he found with someone that he thought he trusted, only for that person to then go and leak it to the world. So, alright, so there's this hack story, and this is the one that seems to have more evidence going for it. So it's either that, or that, yes, there is some, disgruntled employee. That's the other narrative going here. Now, it's worth noting that there never has been a shred of evidence to support the disgruntled employee theory, right? No hard evidence. That purely appeared because people joined the dots based on the recent expose of Naughty Dog's working conditions, and it was basically a sort of situation of, the shoe fits, so people assumed that's how it leaked. So then we're left thinking, who do we actually believe? Naughty Dog have got every incentive to say that it was a hack, because the story of it being a disgruntled employee, that's obviously terrible for their image. But there is, so far, basically zero hard evidence available in either direction. The hacker story does seem more believable, and, it is what Sony and co. have said and what many journalists have said, and it's also what that person PixelButts said on Twitter. Now, Kotaku did talk to PixelButts, and while they don't know the person's identity, it is always possible that Kotaku were able to, get some more evidence from them or something like that to verify their story. But still, Kotaku are not 100% confident. Their headline reads, "Hackers are likely responsible." It does not say that they are responsible. Now, I agree with Kotaku's headline. I think it is likely hackers, but as I said, we've got zero hard evidence in either direction. I mean, certainly, an employee would be far, far easier to track down by a security team if they leaked it, and they wouldn't really have that much of an incentive to leak it. They'd lose all their benefits, their severance, all of those things. Now, on the hacker side, I mean, there is just the incentive of purely hacking something for the sake of it, thinking that you're kind of safe and hidden away. I think what's maybe key here is that the original hacker doesn't seem to be the leaker, if that story is to be believed. And that means, yes, the leaker is somebody else, maybe in that hacking team or in their circle of people they know. And that does seem like a more believable story because, being real, that's something that has happened loads of times before in the past. Now, going back to Jason Schreier, who said that according to his contacts in Naughty Dog, it's not an inside job. What do we think about that? Well, Jason broke the story of Naughty Dog's working conditions originally, the big expose. Now, if it wasn't for his report going large, then the theory of it being a disgruntled employee probably would not have caught on as much, or wouldn't really have appeared. If it was a disgruntled employee, then that would back up Jason's narrative, right? That would be sort of backing up what he has been pushing into the world. And that would mean that in some ways, yes, Jason would have every incentive to suggest that it was a disgruntled employee, because it would validate his work. So, why is he saying that he doesn't think it's a disgruntled employee? Well, either A, he's a journalist and he is pursuing the truth, regardless of if it supports his past work, or B, he's just lying about his sources because, I don't know, he wants to cover up for Naughty Dog or something like that. I mean, there's certainly a lot of people who would like to believe that Jason is getting these, bags of money from Sony, but at the end of the day, I mean, if he was getting bags of money for Sony, I don't really think that the initial Naughty Dog report that he did, which was absolutely scathing, I don't think that would have actually came about. And if you look at the past, I mean, regardless of, say, his personal political opinions or anything like that, he generally has produced, really good work, right? Good journalism, actual true journalism, not just reposting, press releases and stuff. And I mean, this isn't me shilling for Jason. I do have my qualms with him as well. But, right now, I think it does seem more likely that what he is saying is true here. Overall, though, the community obviously does favor one story because it does line up with much of, I think what seems both reasonable and also is more spicy. I mean, a disgruntled employee getting revenge on the company at the expense of themselves. That is a better story, right? The killdozer of Naughty Dog, that a visionary dictatorial game director drove his staff hard, crunched them, rammed an unpopular story through the company, and, the killdozer came out and sort of had his final vengeance. That's a great story. Now, okay, for all we know, that latter part about Neil could be a little bit true. There have certainly been rumors and some articles appearing there, but so far they seem mostly unsubstantiated. Anyway, you certainly have got the more emotive version of events, and I think you can see why that version of events would be the one that would spread fast. I mean, that said, I think it is the case that even if it turns out, yes, this is a hacker, Neil and co have still got a lot I'd like to hear them actually talk about. Some of those claims, about Neil and the company culture, right? To be clear here, right? I'm not religious. I never have been, but I remember Ken Levine talking about the characterization of Comstock in BioShock Infinite and how he, being an atheist, didn't understand parts of, the sort of deep religious experience that some of his religious staff members had. Of course, those religious staff members that did understand that, they had issues with how Comstock was initially being portrayed. And while I imagine there was things that maybe offended those people and those concerns maybe weren't met by the story, Levine did say that by listening to those staff, he was able to make Comstock, a more believable character, because he sort of took on their criticism and tried to understand it. So, there are rumors right now that, people who went against sort of Druckmann and what the sort of higher-ups there wanted were kind of, branded as being degenerates, retrograde, maybe a few ists, a few isms. But again, they're sort of unsubstantiated. Right now, it's basically just hard to tell if there's any meat to those. I'm, willing to believe either way. If somebody didn't like the story of The Last of Us 2, they wanted to make some things up that would hurt the devs, then, that kind of is what they would say. Right now, though, there just doesn't appear to be anything concrete, okay? And I'd say this, bar the leaked materials themselves, there is just about nothing concrete here. Nothing that anyone can say with complete authority, is the case. And that's why I would say that I recommend not attaching oneself specifically to any given narrative. It's about keeping an open mind and analyzing new information and new things as they come in, and not having an emotional attachment to, a particular outcome from this story. If I go to what I personally think, I do actually think that the hack is probably more likely. Now, could that hacker have got a tip from a staffer who maybe wasn't thrilled at how the company were treating their staff or writing the game? Yeah, that is totally possible. But I think my main point here is right now, we just don't know. And it would be irresponsible for me to actually say that we do know things for sure when we actually don't. But given the size of this story, I've got to imagine that the people with contacts, the people with sources, will be trying to dig into this. And in the same way that, we have seen many sort of big articles sort of diving into things, exposing things, that if there are bad things going on, we probably will find out. Because certainly there's a lot of drama, maybe there's a little bit of smoke, and there's a lot of people who would stand to benefit from actually looking into that, trying to see, is there fire? What's actually going on? I mean, certainly if I'm to bring my own emotions into it, if you know what my reactions to the leak have been and how I don't have that much faith it'll actually turn out well. And if it does turn out that, this is some game director just going off on one, doing this, trying to subvert expectations for the sake of it, and doing all that just sort of nihilistic droll stuff that is pretty normal, and then it turns out they're being a massive dick to their team. I mean, there's a little bit of me that would sort of, hear that and think, could have guessed it, that's kind of funny. But at the end of the day, I've got to be responsible to all of you, and as much as maybe I would personally find it enjoyable or funny or maybe a bit of schadenfreude for that to be the case, we don't know if it's the case or not. So it would be irresponsible of me to actually start pushing that narrative in you when there's just not evidence right now. Anyway, there is one final thing to finish off this video on, and that is actually that Naughty Dog, via a video from Neil Druckmann himself, they basically announced that the game has went gold, and that does mean, as he said, that the discs are being pressed, and the EXE is heading up to the PS Store. And there's not much else to say about it, really, right? Comments are turned off. That's obviously a bad look. We obviously know why, but it is a bad look. And the like to dislike ratio is also not good, 13k positive to 23k negative. Yeah, I mean, there's probably going to be a lot made of that. I think really it's not that newsworthy because it is just a reflection of a situation that we basically do already know. In terms of other things, there's been talk from, Neil about it's a game, you got to play the whole game through. I will admit, I did find it quite funny him saying that when a lot of Naughty Dog content is basically just a movie with action sequences. But, I get his point, right? There are certainly some gutsy narrative decisions made in this video game based on the leaks. And I know right now I don't really have that much faith that they'll pull them off. I find that sort of, there's you could say maybe a sort of a turn of expectations maybe at the middle of the game. I find it very hard to believe that they'll actually pull that off. Now, if they do pull it off, well, I would be surprised and more power to them. I don't think they will, but so he did sort of reference that, a lot of these things have been leaked out of context, and, maybe that context will make those narrative points actually be a little bit better. It's interesting. I mean, a lot of people have brought up Metal Gear Solid 2, right? A lot of people very much wanted to be Snake, and they weren't particularly happy when they were stuck playing Raiden for the entire game. And that certainly was a spicy situation from back in the day. But really the point is, we can't say that much with too much authority until this stuff actually gets out, right? I don't think the story's going in a good direction. I'm highly suspicious of it based on the leaks. I mean, if we think about Game of Thrones, right? That was a situation where, look, I'm a book reader. I think it was really season 6. I just realized they're writing this for, I think it was about season 6 of the show that I just really saw, wow, Game of Thrones is going in the ditch. So it was no surprise to me, and that whole line, you want the good girl, but you need the bad, right? And you got all that just terrible writing, terrible plotting going on, and them just messing up so many characters. I mean, man, God, if you're used to that world from the books, what they ended up doing as the show progresses, total disaster. But season 8 of Game of Thrones was obviously pretty terrible, and I saw the leaks right way in advance, and at the time I kind of thought, well, I could see how these things could happen in the books and actually be good. I could see, Dany going in the way that she went. And, that being pulled off by George Martin pretty well in the novel, right? When he's got the time and the space to actually do that. But then, I did sort of, think about the people running the show and just thought, well, I mean, with the quality of the writing we've really got in the last 2 seasons, highly doubt that these rather crazy leaks are actually going to, pull off and be good. Now, that's really, I'm bringing this up because those are leaks that were really rough, right, in terms of what they were suggesting was going on for the plot and, you know, in the context of how they could actually pull that off. But it still would have been possible for those leaks, even if they seemed iffily paced and a little bit weird in some places, it would be possible for a very, you know, a mastercraft people to actually pull those plot points off, you know, to sort of thread the needle there. Maybe George Martin could do it, but, you know, it's just that sort of thing where, like, that's a case where we saw these really bad-looking leaks, and yeah, it turned out to be really bad. It's always possible that Naughty Dog could have these pretty bad-seeming leaks and actually turn it around and have it be good. I can't say I've got that much faith that that'll actually be the case, though, if I'm being real with you, but yeah, it's just one of those situations where it's pre-release right now. We do have to wait and judge the final product. Will I play it for a review? I mean, I'm interested in that world, and it is newsworthy, so I probably will play it and review it and give you some sort of, you know, my honest take on whether they actually pulled off that story or not, and you know, I don't anticipate liking it, and certainly I think there's a lot of things, if it's going the way that I personally suspect it will be going and how they'll be executing it, yeah, there's a lot of things I think, where I feel like I know where they're going to go wrong. So there's a lot to talk about there, but my real point here is, this is an ongoing situation. We can't say anything concrete right now, and being overly emotionally connected to one outcome or the other here, ultimately for some video game drama, I think is not particularly productive. So yeah, that's what's up with the Naughty Dog story. I can't imagine too much more will come out unless somebody with serious sources can, you know, sort of blow the lid off this story in between now and the game's release. So I'd say that's pretty much it for now, probably. Anyway, that's it for this video. Let me know, though, where are you falling in this whole spectrum of Naughty Dog-related stuff. Of course, be sure to hit that sub button tomorrow. We will be having Mick Gordon. We will have an episode of the Roundup. We've also got our deep dive into E3 and a whole bunch of other content on the way as well. So, thank you very much for all your support, and with that, I'll see you next time.